Sweet Christmas.
Shout out to my birds.
Hello. This is Che.
And this is Corey.
And this is the Next Time On podcast. And today, well, I don't know why I said and today, it's the same intro since the beginning of time. A podcast where two lifelong friends discuss all things amazing and all things fetid in popular culture. It'd be like if Tom and Jerry, instead of raging a war of attrition upon one another, joined forces to bring you the best podcast in the world. Is that fair, Corey?
Yeah. Tom and Jerry. This is where we're at now in these.
What is this? What are these sighs? This
Nothing.
is great content.
Uh-huh.
Corey, haven't you taken an improv class? You got to sell the bit.
Don't tell people I've taken improv classes. That's not cool. It's unfair.
That's not information you want out there. That's not information you want out in the public.
That's a low blow right there. Not everybody needs to know my shit.
Well, today we won't be doing improv, even though Corey is an improv expert.
No.
Today is the continuation of our list week, episode 3. If you have not heard the other ones, after you finish this one, go back and check out the other 2. We've done the best of the rest so far, everything that's not a comic book, TV, or movie. And we've also done the best TV. And depending on when you're listening to this, maybe movie is out too. But before we get into our lists, as always, a couple points of business. Please go check us out at nexttimeon.net. That's our website. If you guys can tell, I'm operating on like 1.5 hours of sleep. So,
What the hell are you doing?
fucking reading and watching movies.
You're a psychopath.
At Next Time On Pod, on the social media platforms. Nexttimeon.net is the website where all the archived podcasts, all the writing and all that good stuff can be found. And last but not least, newest addition to the family is the YouTube channel, which is in the description. Go over there and subscribe. If you're on the YouTube right now, if so, you got dealt this amazing podcast by the YouTube algorithm. First of all, thank you, Susan. Appreciate that. Second of all, don't forget to like and subscribe, click that bell, all that good stuff. But no dilly-dally.
You can see me stretching on camera.
Yeah, today there's going to be a lot of me yawning. I'm already prepared for it, but I'm about halfway into a nice yerb. So it's going to be a high energy podcast until I absolutely crash after it. Before so we don't hit the crash, so I'm not like at number 1 dead asleep. Let's just jump into it because we've got a couple great lists here for you guys today to talk about some great comic books. So Corey, do you want to go first? Give the people your 10 through 6.
Sure thing. My first up is number 10 is Immortal Hulk by Al Ewing. I mean, there's various artists. I didn't really know which one to list. I think it was a 48 to 50 issue run of this amazing, weird ass horror book that I didn't expect those years ago to enjoy as much as I did. I'm not a Hulk fan, but just a combination of just good psychological, supernatural storytelling with this. It's a pure-on horror book, which I usually do not like, but it is very, very good. It's not really for the faint of heart, especially if you don't like body horror. But I gotta say, it was just an amazing run front to back. You rarely see this, something like this, especially come out of something like The Big Two. It felt weird. It felt different. I'm surprised that Al Ewing was able to get away with it. If anything, I'm happy that more people are starting to realize how good of a writer he is. He's fantastic. Next up, I got
that's been like consistently one of the best things that Marvel's been doing for years.
Absolutely.
And,
I was worried I was going to have any Marvel on this, but I ended up having 3 on there, and I'm actually pretty happy that I was able to get some in there for once. I feel like we don't.
Our complaint about Marvel has always been they are capable of great, so why don't they do it more consistently?
Exactly.
It's not that Marvel only drops garbage. We've never claimed that, but it would be great if there was just more stuff as good as Immortal Hulk out there.
Yeah.
Not 7,000 Star Wars comic books that nobody's reading.
It's the problem is their number ones are usually not the best. But like a lot of the issues that I have right now are series that have been going on for at least a year or if not longer. Number 9 is a book that we've talked about several times in the last few months, The Good Asian, written by Pornsak. Jay, can you help me with that last name?
You know I'm bad at it, but I'm pretty sure it's Pornsak Pichotchot.
And art by Alexandre Tiffany. Sorry, guys. Sorry to the creative team for the horrible butchering of your names. I'm so sorry.
I have decided that I think the best thing is just to show an honest attempt. We tried our best. We're dumb Americans. Don't get us wrong, but we tried, and that's all that.
Sorry,
that's all
guys.
we can really say.
But The Good Agent is just this stellar tribute to Detective Noir comics. I mean, Detective Noir films. Takes a very unlikely protagonist from an angle that we truly do not see, and has been delivering such a really good and strong mystery. I believe the first arc ended a couple issues ago, but the mystery still is like very much ongoing. If you haven't got a chance to pick up this book, I really recommend it. It's just a really well done crime novel.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that like there's nothing quite like it, and that on top of the fact that it is written amazingly. Pisho Chok's just like it has a great knack for the genre. I do think I also love this book. The good thing about Corey's list is a lot of the books that you have on your list were the books that I was really struggling with trying to fit on my list. So luckily, this would have been easily in my if we were doing a top 20 or even top 15, this would have been on my list for sure.
I don't really have like a necessarily like method for putting books on this list. It's just which ones I've enjoyed in that descending order. If I'm missing things, I'm missing things. I didn't read them, but these are just comics that I believe that have been staying consistently good, and every time I pick them up, I cannot wait to keep them going. Number 8 is The Marvel's Eternals, the current ongoing, written by Kieran Gillen and art by Sed Ribic. This came out before leading into the Eternals movie, and it is just fucking awesome. It takes this larger-than-life approach to it, like treating it like a kind of methodical but humorous Jonathan Hickman of like Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four fame, and made it into this really, really cool sci-fi story. And by the end of the first arc, I think there's only been 8 issues that have come out of this book so far. There was a big break that they took. But I gotta say, after that first arc, I was like, my jaw was left on the floor. The one-shots for this book have been fantastic. If you were even slightly peaked from the movie, I'd recommend this book. It's definitely a lot more leaning into their comic book origins and like kind of a lot of their classical roots that are tied into like old Marvel, like Jack Kirby era. But now, it's really cool to see someone who has clearly an affinity for these lesser known characters and just going all out with making a good story.
Yeah, and in regards to the movie, if you were one of the many, although Corey and I disagree if you've heard that podcast, you're the one that hated the movie, this shouldn't scare you off from the comic book either. The comic book's excellent.
Yeah, no, the comic book's, it's like it's definitely, as the movie did take a lot of liberties, this book is a lot more comic booky, for lack of a better term. It's very, if you're like ever in the DC New Gods, like Mr. Miracle type of shit, it's very like reminiscent of those kind of like politics and books, and I mean shit, they even use a lot of Thanos in it. So
I think this is the closest we've gotten to like the peak LSD era of the 70s that I've read, or 60s and 70s that I've read in a comic in a while.
Yeah,
it's a ton of fun, and the art's beautiful.
I agree as well. What's next? Number 7, I wanted to put this in my top 5, and I'm kind of upset I wasn't able to. Daredevil, written by Chip Zdarsky and art by Marco Checchetto. This is probably it's weird to say this is my favorite book at number 7. This Daredevil run that's been going on the last, I think it's 3 years, has been fucking just stellar and amazing, and the art's been great. It's this story of like Daredevil's character who's trying to basically make like trying to get because he's dealing with that whole Catholic guilt bullshit, but he's trying to basically atone his sins for accidentally killing somebody, and it's kind of the fallout for him stopping to be a superhero, then kind of coming back, and then trying to face what he views as justice in like the eyes of the law. And as well as having 2 other storylines involving Wilson Fisk that is really good, and Elektra trying to be Daredevil. And it's just also a really good Bullseye story as well in there. It's great, and I think it's really a fun, interesting idea to look at a character who's tied so deeply into like law, eventually just lose faith in the entire system because the system's dumb and broken. But Daredevil's like such a good character to explore those themes with, and I think Chim Zdarsky has made not just a very good political commentary book, but also just a really good superhero book.
One of the podcast's favorites, right? Chip Zdarsky I think this is our 4th year doing end of year lists. I would bet he and Lemire or King are the only ones that have appeared on every single list.
I think that might
every year they're just Zdarsky's just so consistent. I know Stillwater last year, one of my favorite books. He's just a good writer. He also just does so many different styles, which I think is always fun in a comic book author.
It's very funny that I think like the best Spider-Man that I've ever read is in this Daredevil comic. Like he'll only pop up every once in a while, but I think it's like the best Spider-Man that I've ever read. And my last of my bottom 5 is Rorschach, written by Tom King and art by Jorge Fornes. It was a 12-issue run of this really interesting, politically tied, very, very timely at the time when the book first started publishing, and it was very timely at the very end as well. Yeah. Just a really good book. You don't really need to know about Watchmen going into it. If you just want to read this interesting mystery, I recommend it. I don't want to give too much away with it. We did talk about this in other podcasts, but I think by itself, you'd be remiss not to just pick up that volume if you get the chance to. I've been keeping an eye out for it myself.
Yeah, Rorschach is another. More proof that Tom King has figured out a formula that really, really works for him. It's 12 issues, excellent.
That's what I think you should.
I think you should artist and just bang out great miniseries over and over again.
I just don't think he should do ongoing. I think he should just stay in this lane for the rest of his life, and that's not being. I'm just saying, keep focusing your energy on just putting these fucking things out because they fucking work.
It definitely works for me. If this is all Tom King does for the rest of his career, I'm fine with that.
I don't think I've ever been disappointed by these 12 issues. I don't like his 12 issue runs. I don't think that's happened to me yet. But yeah.
Well, Heroes in Crisis was a.
Oh shit! I forgot it. See, I blocked that out of my memory. You see. But also that's tied into like continuity shit, so I'm kind of like maybe that's one of the reasons I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it for a lot of reasons. But I don't want to. This top 10, Che. Thank you for.
I was just didn't want you to forget about your favorite comic. That's all.
But also just a honorable mention to his current ongoing Human Target, which has been very good. I think it's on issue 3. Came out at the time of this recording. And also Mr. Miracle. That was our number 1, I think, 2 years ago as well.
Yeah. Well, the mention of Human Target is a good time. I think we probably forgot to do it before this, but just to mention, like, there's going to be some stuff on here or stuff that's not on here, like Human Target, like Primordial, Friday, which I've been really enjoying. Friday, just books that like had like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 issues in the year. It feels weird to put them on this list with things that had, almost entire runs or full completed books that came out in the year. So. Don't think that's a knock on some great ongoings that are going on right now.
And I'm sure we're going to probably follow up with those. Yeah. I'm sure we're going to follow up with those at the very end. I mean, that's why we kept off like Strange Adventures last year, because we're like, we can't rate it. It's only been out for like 2 issues.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's my top 5. Che, how about you go?
All right. First up on my list is the first of, and I didn't even really notice this until I started writing my list out, the first of 3 drawn and quarterly books. This is Factory Summers by Guy.
We like to call those comic book fans fucking uppity assholes who like drawn and quarterly books. I'm kidding.
They're fucking good. What can I say? Although I will say,
I'm kidding.
The same people whose lists are like all drawn and quarterly and Fantagraphic are also the same people who had the other history of the DC Universe on all of their lists. And I don't know, did you ever read the other history of the DC Universe, Corey?
I read 1 issue of it.
It's not a comic book.
No.
It's an illustrated novel. There's 0 text bubbles in the entire thing. It's a very fascinating read. John Ridley, the famed screenplay writer, is like, think hates comic books, which is interesting to read, but
Yeah,
that's not on my
I
list.
think-
We're not talking about that.
I think it's one of those things where people are like, "This is making fun of or like this is like poking at the comic book thing."
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
But it wasn't like in a
political
funny
statements.
way. He's like, I
Yeah.
hate comics and I hate that they
Yeah.
exist. It was
There's,
just kind
there's
of
definitely
weird.
some books that were like, there's books that balance that
Yeah.
entire thing very well, and that's my number one. But I'm not going to give that away just yet.
Yeah. But Factory Summers by Guy Delisle, I think. He's a French-Canadian. This is actually... I also didn't realize this until I was starting the list. All of my Drawn and Quarterly books have been translated from other languages. This was translated by
Jesus Christ, Jay.
Helga Dasher and Rob Aspinall from the original French. It is the story of 3 summers, an autobiographical look at Guy's life as a young boy in Quebec working in a paper factory, and the like grueling mundanity of the work. It reminded me a lot, if anybody's read this book, Nickel and Dimed, which is this nonfiction look at like minimum wage jobs in America. It's pretty old, actually, from the 80s, I want to say, maybe 90s. But it is one beautifully drawn, but also is just like this fascinating world that you never really get. Maybe there's a lot of people reading a bunch of comic books and books about paper factories, but we're just like factory work in general. It's a world that you never really get to see explored in this way. And I think the medium of comic books is so fascinating to see autobiographical looks at. I couldn't get theirs. I don't think there's a digital version of this yet. I'm going to hold up a couple pages to the camera jankily to show people what the art looks like. I love the way this book uses color. It's all these like black and white pages with like splashes of color all over the place. And there's a couple books like this that came out this year. There's no one else that did the same thing, which would have been on my list, except for it is way too short. I just wish people, when they were writing good stuff, just wrote more. But I kind of love that art style where you have this like simplistic black and white cartoon, where you throw these splash of color to emphasize panels. It's great. Number 9 on my list, they're taking their, honestly at this point it just seems like a required place on my list, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' 2021 book Reckless, which is actually technically 3 full graphic novels, full hardcovers, whatever you want to call them. Just more excellent noir, crime drama from one of my favorite teams of artists, writers. I mean, obviously last year I had Pulp on there. Before that, here All My Heroes Are Junkies and Bad Weekend, and we've talked about a lot of Brubaker and Phillips books before, and like Criminal, for example, or Kill or Be Killed, which I adore, and I know Corey's not like a massive fan of, but he just
I think it might be like
works so
the
well
one
together.
comic that you recommended me that I just despised. No offense.
Not the one. Don't forget
Oh, no, that comic was bad. I don't understand why you like
Coffin
that.
Bound.
That comic is really bad. I truly do not understand why you like
Coffin
that.
Bound Volume 1 is a fucking banger. Coffin Bound Volume 2 is not my thing.
You can never
I have
ever
to
give me
admit.
shit for Speed Racer. I swear to God. I swear to God.
I've never given you shit for Speed Racer.
Yes, you have. Whatever. Please continue. Too early.
It's just Brubaker and Phillips just really understand this genre, and I love. And it's a genre that I really love. That I think there's not enough great comics in, like just crime comics, like gritty 1970s, 1980s movie inspired books. I just want more of this, and it's a bummer to me that there isn't more of this. But I'm glad that I can rely on this team to basically churn out just great shit over and over again. Although I will say, guys, could we do some digital editions? Like, I just don't have that much bookshelf space to keep buying more Brubaker and Sean Phillips stuff. Basically, it's gonna get to the point where I just have an entire shelf of just their work because they refuse to release any digital stuff.
So this is like their the 2 books that came out this year, right? You just talked
2
about
books that
their
came out this year,
entire
which is
run.
a continuation of it was like an ongoing miniseries that ended last year, and there's 2, Destroy All Monsters and Friend of the Devil, that came out this year.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. No, I remember seeing this graphic novel sitting on the shelves. I didn't even know it really continued, honestly, into this year.
I imagine there's going to be a full collected edition coming soon. Maybe not, but you can pick up those 3. I think all 3 are in hardcover now. So
I honestly think that they're only in hardcover. I don't think they do.
No,
single
sorry,
issues for
the
this
first,
book.
they're only in. That's what I said. They're like, it's very annoying to me, Brew Baker. If you're listening to their podcast, which I know you are, but just cut me some slack, man. Cut me some fucking slack.
The next one that's going to come out is going to come out in April of next year.
Which I'll buy because Brew Baker.
I'm excited to pick this up. I'm excited to check this out.
Yeah. My number 8 is Strange Adventures, which is higher on the list, which we will talk about then. Higher on Corey's list. So I'll just jump right over that. We'll have a more in-depth discussion when we get to that. Number 7 is That Texas Blood, another one that was on my list. I think either number 2 or maybe my number 1 from last year. I don't remember. Just I love this book so much, and
I think it might have been your number 1.
Yeah, this book is so great, and its lower placement on the list really doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it hasn't gotten worse. Don't take it to mean that. I just, of course, have the human instinct to value new things. I think higher, but Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips' book, this like gritty crime book set in small town Texas. Where the second volume is, it feels like it's a kind of a different story than the first one. It contains a lot of the same characters, not entirely the same characters. There's a time jump. Yeah. But I just love this. I love this world they've dropped us in. Phillips and Condon have this knack of telling like really human personal stories in the scope of this story that feels very broad. And once again, I think still one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character in an ongoing, is the sheriff in this book. He's just so quietly, brilliantly, he doesn't ever do anything big and eye-catching on the page, but it feels like it's just beloved. I love this character so much. If you have not picked up That Texas Blood, definitely pick up the first volume, but if for some reason you're like, I don't have time for that, you can just jump straight into the second volume. Some stuff will not make a lot of sense, but it is basically a completely different story in the same world. Last of my first 5 is The Waiting by Kim Suk Gendry Kim, I think. This is the second of the 3 drawn and quarterly books that I have. Also translated. This is from Korean, and this is a story about a family that was separated after the Korean War splits up North and South Korea, obviously, and this familial struggle that is obviously the focal point of the massive backdrop that is the shifting of an entire country. I will not pretend to be an expert on the history of North and South Korea or the Korean War at all, so this was a very interesting exposure for me in particular, and it reminded me a lot of Joe Sacco's Palestine, one of my favorite comic books of all time, and coincidentally he does a blurb on the back. I think they knew Drawn and Quarterly was aware of the parallels between the two. This is not, as far as I know, nonfiction, but of course the story is based in very real stories that happen to very real families, and Gendry Kim's writing and art is just absolutely fantastic. It's always hard to like really gauge the just showing it on the pages to the camera again. It's really hard to gauge like the talent behind the dialogue in a book that's been translated, but either the translator did great work on this, or probably both, honestly. Just excellent. The dialogue really flows, and I love the way the characters are manifested on the page. It's just a really beautiful book that I think it's a very worthy read. In a year that had, like I said, I was really struggling with this list again. In a year that had a lot of really great comic books, this is one of the more rewarding reads I had. This just because it just feels so timely, obviously, as everything that's about how awful the world is feels timely, just because shit sucks. But what can you do?
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, absolutely love that book. That's my 10 through 6. And,
all right, shall we take a quick break and come back with the our top 5s?
Yeah, let's do it.
Dr. Banner, now might be a really good time for you to get angry. That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry.
And we're back.
What's up?
All right, it's time for our top fives. I'm going to throw it over to Corey because he's going to throw it right back to me because we're going to talk about this one a little bit later in the episode anyway. So,
Yeah, no, my number 5 was Dead Dog's Bite by Tyler Boss, art and writing by him, from 4 Kids Walking to a Bank and What's the Furthest Place from Here. I'm not going to say anything until we get to it later down the list, though.
yeah, this is no surprise to any listeners of the podcast. This is further up my list. So I'll go to my number 5. My number 5 is Ram V and Philip Andrade's The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, the 5-part miniseries from Boom Studios, which is basically about Kali, the Hindu god of death, is fired as the god of death and sent down to Earth to be immortal. And it's just, first of all, the art is incredible. I love this style of art. It feels very and maybe this is just because it's been on my brain recently because Netflix tried to destroy it, but it feels very Cowboy Bebop, where it's this sort of like these long, thin, beautifully rendered characters that are semi-realistic but also quite otherworldly, and it fits so beautifully with this story that is about the struggles with humanity or mortality and humanity and death. And it reminds me a lot of Day Tripper because the story is told through this way of Layla Starr / Kali, who's inhabited the body of Layla Starr, keeps dying as referenced by the title, and is brought back to life over the course of this boy's life, and their stories continue to collide until it's time for him to start struggling with his mortality or coming to terms with it. I won't spoil the end of this book, although
This
if
is
this is
one
the first time
of
you've
the
heard
books.
people die, then I don't know if this is the podcast for you.
I was looking at the art a bit for this book before we started reading started the podcast. I didn't get a chance to actually read it myself because it was like on my list, and I just wish we had like another month because I wanted to read so many of these freaking books. But I'm excited. That's like my number one. Well, I think you have another book on here that's going to be like my book that I'm going to read immediately after this. But I've been really excited to check out this. It's very weird, trippy art. It looks very, very cool. Up my alley, definitely.
I am obsessed with this art, and until this year, I really hadn't heard of Ram V before. He did Paradiso, a book that has been on my list for years and years and years, and just has kept falling by the wayside. But also this year did the Swamp Thing run for DC, which I also really love. Like his writing and comic book style is great. So yeah, if you are looking for, and it's a quick read, like it's only 5 issues. It's a completed series. I imagine there's no word that it's coming back. I'd be interested to see how he would bring it back, if at all. But yeah, definitely go pick this up if you can.
Seems like he's getting a bunch of DC work coming up, so I'm excited to check out more of his stuff. I remember really liking his little. I think he did a couple stints on the Justice League Dark book, which was awesome.
His Justice League Dark annual is supposed to be coming out pretty soon, which will be one of the few annuals I pick up a year because I still don't really get them.
Justice League Dark.
No, annuals in general. I'm not really sure what the point of them is, but
Truthfully, I don't know either.
If there's a great author on them, I usually grab them.
It's just more confusing because Justice League Dark's been canceled for
I think it's his, according to his website / the DC website, the annual schedule for like March. So
jeez, 2021 annual, great, awesome. Yeah. That makes sense. Whatever.
Corey, what's your number 4? We saved this one for later, obviously.
Okay, my number 4 is Strange Adventures, written by Tom King, art by Mitch Gerards and Doc Shaner. They go back and forth with the art, so it's not like one person did one issue, the other person did a different issue. Another 12-issue miniseries written by Tom King. It tells the story of the pulp kind of John Carter of Mars as character, Adam Strange, and he is caught in the midst of two worlds while also being accused of murder. And as this book goes in, it goes as like a bit of a disassembly of this character and this hero that everyone thought saved like this world into like devolving him into revealing this mystery as time goes on. It's one of the books that I think benefits so much from a second read through, just because of perspective shifting, and as the mystery unfolds, you can see it coming, but seeing all the ramifications of it is great. And I think issue 12 is such a satisfying ending for this book. But yeah, no, I simply adored this series. I picked it up as soon as I saw it, like picked up the hardcover as soon as I saw it. But no, I love Strange Adventures.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously one of our favorite podcasts, our favorite comics. We've been talking about this on the podcast since it came out. It's one, like, I'm glad you pointed out the ending, because it's one of those books that I think landing the ending was so important. Unlike Rorschach, where like the ending is great, don't get me wrong, but if the ending on Rorschach was like not amazing, the way that I think the ending is amazing though, but it's like the journey of that book was so interesting anyway. I think this is very Game of Thrones-esque, honestly. Is like, yes, the journey was amazing, but a lot of that has to do with, especially because it's a mystery book, is like how it ended. And I love the way this story lands. I think it is. I think we talked about this. It's my number 2 Tom King book. It's going to be hard, I think, ever to top Sheriff of Babylon. I fucking love that book. Is this above Mr. Miracle for you? I don't know if we ever decided.
I don't think so.
No. Yeah, I think this is number 2, and then Mr. Miracle for me is number 3.
But I will say this: I think it's in the conversation if we were going to talk about it as like the way that they used comic books, the comic book medium. Yes. Because what they do is have like the current story is taken by Mitch Gerads, who also penned. He also drew Mr. Miracle, and he has this bit of a gritty, realistic approach. He's really good at showing facial reactions. Yeah. And then we get this on the other end of the spectrum, Doc Shaner's art, where we're doing it as a flashback, so the readings through his book, and his art it just kind of takes you into this sci-fi beautiful world that I think it's so intentional to do so, where it's making this horrifying war seem beautiful. Yeah. And I think it's such a cool idea to kind of jump back and forth timeline wise between this this very like beautiful like kind of, as I said, like very akin to throwback to these like John Carter and all these other like spacefaring sci-fi books, and then come back to the real world with it. But no, yeah, I think and I love that because it's like these and also I love the writing in this, because whenever we're seeing them on the past in this planet, they're very much speaking very Shakespearean or like very over the top, and then we'll come back and they'll be speaking like normal people. Yeah. So I think Tom King does this like his job exactly. I think he does exactly what he was going for, and I think he executed that perfectly. I just thought Mr. Miracle was a bit. I liked Mr. Miracle a bit better.
Yeah, I think
I like the character Mr. Miracle a bit better than Adam Strange.
Yeah, I mean, I have this above it, but I don't. That's not like by a mile. It's definitely they're very close. In quality. I mean, I want to read his Mr. Terrific. I would like to see it be a Mr. Terrific 12 issue. Yeah, you almost said ongoing, and then you were like, no ongoings for Tom King. No, I heard it.
I would love. I feel like you could definitely do a sequel series in this. It's like it doesn't. It's like this kind of like it's like not super Elseworldy, but I think you could do a good like sequel set in this universe, just following Mr. Terrific.
Yeah, definitely. I also it would be a obviously a new thing for King, because he's never gone back and revisited any of his work. But I would love to see that, explore something else in one of these worlds he's built. That'd be interesting.
Jay, what's your next one?
My number 4 is Department of Truth, the second appearance of James Tynion on the list. This is the James Tynion and mostly Martin Simmons. There are some issues that are written by other artists that do sort of spin-off is the right word, like related stories, but not self-contained, but obviously in the world of the Department of Truth. It is, for those of you who are not familiar with the concept of the Department of Truth, basically we are in a world in which if enough people believe something, it becomes reality, which ends up being as horrifying as that would sound for anybody who's been on the internet in the last, forever. And obviously, again, this was on my list last year. Loved this book last year. It continues to the second volume, completed earlier this year, and continues to be just batshit crazy, following our main character Cole. His story just gets more and more insane, and the Department of Truth, the story around the Department of Truth and Lee Harvey Oswald, yes, that Lee Harvey Oswald, continues to just get more and more batshit, and it is kind of everything I love about Tynan's writing. Is he balances humor and horror and beautiful character development in a way that I don't think many other authors are capable of. And even though I think not my complaints, but my least favorite issues of the last volume were the ones that Simmons didn't write or draw for a lot of reasons. One, because I think Simon's art is perfect for the story, but also just because anytime we left the world of the department and Cole, it felt a little disappointing. And especially now that the story with the woman in the red dress is picking up, and she's more of a villain and more of an insidious character surrounding the book, and also just everything gets more and more insidious. It's no shock that this book just gets more evil as it goes on. I absolutely love it. It's a ton of fun.
I love Department of Truth. Yeah. It's such a fun book. It's a dark book. It's I'm sorry, I don't know why I said
very bleak. I do find it to be a lot of fun. I actually find this to be less heavy of a read than his other book that I really love, Nice House on a Lake, which is also very good. But... Which
is weird because I described that one as fun.
Yeah.
For a different reason. No, I love Department of Truth. I think we talked about this book a couple times throughout the year. No, I really like when authors can kind of do their whole, I hate to give it just this, but a kind of Sandman kind of thing where they can just tell whatever story they want to tell in this weird little universe.
Yeah.
And I think he's leaving up such a good mystery, and the idea behind it, just the concept of this world is such a good idea. It's such a fun and good idea that
it's one of those ideas that's so simple it's annoying to me that I didn't think of it.
Exactly.
It's sitting right there in front of you. Good. What if all of the people? What if Kyrie Irving's right? It's the scariest thing you could think of, and then you write a book about it, and you've got
Stop that. Stop it.
Listen, he plays for your Brooklyn Nets, so
they're not my Brooklyn Nets. Let's be very clear.
Are you a Bing Bong guy?
Yeah, I'm a Bing Bong guy now. I'm a depressed Wizards fan.
This is probably fortunately, considering how the season has been going, not a basketball podcast. So we'll move on to your number 3, Corey. What is your number 3?
My number 3 is Nightwing, specifically starting with issue 78, written by Tom Taylor and art by Bruno Redondo. It's weird that I'm going to say this, but this book is doing its best Matt Fraction Hawkeye impression, and that is a good thing.
I think that should always, if you're trying to write a personal, a interior look at a maybe not so beloved character, although I know Nightwing is more beloved than I think Hawkeye was before the Matt Fraction run, I think you should always just try to be emulating what Fraction did with Hawkeye. It's the perfect single character book.
Well, also what I mean is the style of the book is as well, the art, the way that they're kind of paneling it, and even the little kind of jokey
Is there a pizza dog? Is what I want to know though.
There is a dog.
I'll take it.
There's a dog, and it's called Bitewing. So take with that what you will.
Is that the best or the worst writing of all time? Bitewing.
I will say it's the best writing because I was gonna put this book a little bit lower down my list, but the most recent issue 87. Was one of the coolest things I've seen in a comic book in a really long time. What they basically did was draw a continuous comic for 20 something pages, and the entire issue is just because Dick Grayson, basically the story is that he's trying to figure out after Alfred Pennyworth died, he left Dick with $1 billion, and Dick not being Batman, he's how do I use this money to actually help people? and not just beat them senseless.
Bruce has been catching a lot of strays in the DC universe this year. Anybody who read the previously mentioned The Other History of the DC Universe will know Bruce Wayne does not come off well in that book.
Oh my god. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Whatever. It's silly. It's comic. Whatever. But no, I think it's a very, it's a really cool issue. It's a really cool book. Nightwing is such a fun character. They give him a great supporting cast with Barbara Gordon. I love this start. I love this run of this because it's only been 10 issues so far. But I can't. This is probably the most fun I've had with a superhero book. It is. If you're looking for something that's kind of feel good, with some bad guys getting punched in the face, some fun quipping, and just great character interactions throughout the book, I really recommend Nightwing. There's a couple. I forget what issue it is, but there's an interaction between him and Superman for 3 pages, and it's just Tom Taylor is just knows what the fuck he's doing, and I'm glad that he's. I feel I don't know why I was kind of paralleling him in my mind to Chip Zdarsky, but it's whenever I see these two on a book or an ongoing, I'm like, okay, I trust whatever the fuck this is going to be.
Yeah, Tom Taylor's one of those guys who's basically, if, for whatever reason, probably a fault of my own, he doesn't immediately spring to mind when I think of my favorite great comic book writers. But then when I think about all the great stuff he did, I mean, even Dark Knights of Steel that we talked about recently that came out this year. One of my favorite books from last year, Hellblazer, Rise and Fall. Kind of everything that he writes, I really loved. Even DC. Although somebody should change the title of this fucking book, but even Deceased, DC East. I still don't know how to say it. How do you say this?
It's funny though. It's still he's it's funny for a guy who's so good at writing these bleak worlds, where because he's the one who made Injustice, those books as popular as they were.
Yeah.
And him just very good at writing these Elseworlds. He just does such a good job of having this one of those optimist. The character is annoyingly optimistic.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a fun parallel between him and Batman, where it's you have this one guy who went through the same thing, but he's somebody who actually had a healthy emotional person at the very end of it. And that's why I love Nightwing. I feel he's DC's Spider-Man, and when it works very well. When can I get a good Spider-Man ongoing? Who fucking knows? But that's for a different podcast for me to yell about it.
It's not like it's Marvel's most popular property.
It's not well written though. It could be popular. It's just not well written.
No, I'm saying you're never gonna get one because fuck you. That's why.
More or less, honestly. Give me mainline Chip Zdarsky Spider-Man Marvel, please.
I'm about it. I would absolutely read that. Absolutely read that. All right, moving on to my number 3, the third and final of the. Again, this was not intentional. I'm not trying to present myself as some high-minded asshole.
No, it's okay. Right? No, I was talking
I
about
also love superheroes. Okay, I want that on the record. But this is the third and final of my Drawn and Quarterly translated books. I know I sound like a dickhead. I'm sorry, but this book is
I know I made this podcast to talk about superhero comics, and Jay came in here with this bullshit after 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
What can I do? It's not my fault that Rutu Modan wrote a fantastic exploration of the human condition in Tunnels, which is a book translated from Israeli from Aisha Mishori. I've never read any of Modan's books before, but I will absolutely be doing that after this. She's most famous for 3 other books published under Drawn and Quarterly: The Property, Exit Wounds, and Jamality and Other Stories. It is this book, Tunnels, is basically a story about what happens when competing forces want to get at the same goal, and basically that's structured in the premises. There is somebody thinks they found the Ark of the Covenant, yes, that Ark of the Covenant, and they are digging to it from the other side of Israel into Palestine, and that brings about basically all the issues that something like that sounds like it would. The art in this book is beautifully simplistic. I think a lot of this is out of necessity, just because obviously Modon does all of the script and art for something like this, and it's a relatively long book, about 300 pages. And but I also think the art style just really works for this because it is, although it's a story that is tackling a lot of complex themes. Again, a lot like Waiting, I will not pretend to be an expert on the Israeli-Palestine conflict, but this
I
book
literally was
is...
just talking about a guy in tights rescuing a fucking dog, and then 3 minutes later you're talking about the Israeli-Palestine conflict. You go fuck
Although
yourself.
admittedly, this book is not really, it's actually not that heavy. It sounds like it should be. It is a ton of fun. It's really funny. Modon does a, I think, I don't remember what those things are called. In an afterword in the book, talks about how she wanted to tell the story about all of these conflicting ideologies in the world around her as a woman who lives in Israel, an Israeli woman living in Israel, but felt like to do it justice, she had to approach it from the only perspective that she could really know, and that's why the main character is also an Israeli woman who lives in Israel who is struggling with what it means to be, means to be somebody in Israel when you're looking over at Palestine and what your country's done to them, however you feel about that one way or the other. And I think this book manages to do something that is kind of improbable, which is, like I said, it's really fun. It's really funny, but also doesn't feel like it oversimplifies things. And for a book that mentions ISIS like a lot, it's like not that heavy. So if you're worried about like some of my other books on here, my number one is a heavy one, both physically and emotionally. This is like just a beautifully rendered, fun exploration of all these characters.
So if you don't want to be depressed at the end of the year, listen to Corey's list. It's mostly okay.
I think I've done better than usual. I mean, I have, like, obviously The Waiting is at times quite bleak. My number one, which we will get to, is quite bleak. But other than that, I've been pretty good. I tried to give the people some lighthearted stuff. I mean, obviously the Department of Truth will fuck your head up, but what can I say?
Let me get to my number two, which is just an uplifting book. This is The Nice House on the Lake, written by James Tynion the fourth, with art by Alvaro Martinez Bueno. This is a happy book.
Yeah, Corey's giving me shit, but I don't think any single issue of a comic book has fucked me up more than the first issue of this book. So don't pretend like I'm the Grinch of this podcast. It's you.
I don't know what's wrong with me, honestly.
You're broken. You know what's wrong with you. You've been broken by the world.
Yes, that's okay. That's very fair. This book is basically about a group of friends who loosely know each other through this one of their own mutual friends, and they get invited to this ridiculous compound, gigantic house in the middle of nowhere.
Sorry, it's just really funny when you say it that way, because yes, that is technically what happens, but also calling them friends and calling him their friend.
Well, okay, this motherfucker is weird as shit, but I guess it kind of goes into it a bit more.
Yeah.
I don't want to give it away, because I feel like each issue does, like, give more and more on top of it, but it's basically these group of people stuck in a house where the person who invited them there just destroyed the world and killed every living person besides them.
Yep.
And so basically what is happening is what happens after that. I love this book, and Jay's right, it is heavy, but I don't know why I find it so much fun. I think it's such a fun concept. I think it's such a cool concept. I love this personal interactions and seeing these people who, some of them know each other, some of them know each other as well. And I like when people put normal people into situations that are so distressing that they basically break. To me, this is like the perfect, it's definitely showing him how he's excelled as a writer post The Woods, which is about a high school that gets transported to a deadly other world, like a deadly alien world, and something is killing the children, which is just such a horror, disturbing comic. but both of them kind of had that still sense of like, I want to see what's happening, and it's like a very what like most horrors do is like, I want to escape from here. And this horror, to me at least, is like, I cannot wait to see what's happening next. And I think he mixes the thriller genre and the horror genre so well.
Yeah.
And as I always say, like, my favorite Japanese comic is 20th Century Boys, which covers a very similar topic in a sense. And I mean, he definitely has pointed out that he takes references from that. But I think it's such a fun. It shows up
in the first issue on a bookshelf.
Yeah, I think there's like it's like shown on the bookshelf. Yeah. This is really cool concept to me. But yeah, Jay, right. It is not a very happy read. I'm very much bearing the lead on this, but
I should say I also absolutely love this book. Again, so basically, I think the entirety of Corey's list, essentially, except for the ones that are quite literally on my list, would have been in my honorable mentions. So, yeah, I definitely co-sign this. And this is this the third James Tynion book on this list? No, just the second. Okay, good.
There's the second.
We didn't completely lose our minds.
I did leave off Something Still in the Children because I briefly talked about it.
Yeah, and House of Slaughter. I think that the combination of those two things was definitely in contention for being on my list.
Those books probably would have been in my top 5. I just didn't want to waste your guys' time.
This can't become a James Tynion the Fourth podcast. We've talked about it, we discussed,
and I talked to, and I
would
put,
that increase
the
listenership, but I just don't think we could do it.
And I put him on my best of others list as my favorite, one of my favorite creators of this last year. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's up to issue 6 right now. Issue 7 doesn't come out till next year, so. Yeah. But I recommend it if you guys are into something very different.
Also, just more proof that what DC editorial or the publication team, whatever, whoever's making these decisions, is just making like fun risks, like taking like. I just wish, like, again, not that this is the Marvel Pylon Marvel podcast. We did have, like you said, 3 Marvel books on. Listen, we gave them their dues this year. We're not, and I have not read the X-Men. I haven't done my yearly. Let me read all the X-Men books yet. It's just annoying to me that only one of the big 2 is doing stuff like this. I just wish there was more, because this is my favorite type of thing where you just give an author free reign. And obviously the budget and the distribution that Marvel and DC would afford somebody, and just have them be able to tell a story that obviously has been in their head, and that's all. I love this book. I think the fact that it exists is a lot of fun, and the fact that James Tynion is the one that's writing it is great. He's, like you said, he's just the master of comic book horror at the moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Trey, what's your number 2?
My number 2, I considered cutting it from the list because he ghosted us. It's not true. But this is Tyler Boss's Dead Dogs Bite. Although, listen, Tyler, if you do want to ever come on the podcast and do that interview, you're obviously welcome. One of my favorite books of the year, obviously, it's number 2. It is just, it's kind of everything I want from a detective story. I loved Friday, and we talked about Friday a lot last year. I think it was on either one or both of our lists. This is, like, for me, is Friday to 11. It's quirky and weird, and Tyler Boss, this is his first I think his first just major foray into script writing, not just art. But of course, did the art for 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank, a book we've done a book club about, and also the current ongoing for What's the Furthest Place from Here, another book that I absolutely love. But the thing I love most about this book is how intricate every panel and every corner of every page is, and how, like, obviously this was a labor of love for Boss. And I love the little detail of the I don't know what to call it, like the symbol, the logo of the town that keeps showing up in like every page, and then of course becomes very important as the story goes on. You think it's just like this cool reference that we see the symbol everywhere, and it's like in the eyes of a character, and later in like it's on like a milk carton, and then of course as we explore this town, more and more things unfold, and it becomes weirder and more insidious as it goes on. And I think Boss has such a great grasp of character development. I really hope he keeps writing. I mean, I love his art, obviously, and I'm really enjoying What's the Furthest Place from Here right now. again, another book that if there had been more issues probably would have been on my list. But it's only 3 issues in as of recording. No, not even. I think it's only 2 issues in as of recording. And I don't know what else to say about this book. I don't know what I honestly, besides the fact that it's excellently written and the art's fantastic and I love the main character so much, I don't really know why I fell in love with this book so much. It sort of just grabbed me, and I've read it 4 times since it came out. I read it obviously as the ongoing, and then I picked up the hardcover and just read it again and again.
Looking for the hardcover, I haven't been able to find it anywhere though. I really, but no, I agree with you. I thought this was a really like good mystery. I mean, I think his art is so good, and him just being able to like explore what he wanted to explore, and make this very strange mystery just unfold. It's very similar to Friday, but I think what Friday lacks is an ending, and I think what this
what Friday lacks is motivation. Brubaker, write more fucking books. What are you doing?
Yeah, seriously, man, come on, do more books for us. But I did love the this like the small town like mystery angle, and I really do enjoy like when conspiracies end up being satisfying, like this book was. Really good character interactions. I love our main character as this wannabe detective. I think this book was very surprising that to me. I love it when a first-time author just blows it out of the water. I mentioned the chat like just now. I've been really looking for this hardcover, and it seems to be like I can't fucking find it anywhere. I don't know why.
I wonder if they did a really limited printing of it or something. Because I pre-ordered it, so maybe they just like literally were like, it only printed a couple more than the pre-orders or something. Maybe.
I gotta reach out to probably somebody to pick it up. But yeah, I was asking for the book. They're like, "What's first place?" And you're like, "No, I'm talking about the other one." They were like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "Okay." Figure your shit out. No, so pick up Dead Dog's Bite. It's only 4 issues. If you want a really good mystery that like I want to reread it, I've read it issue to issue, and I really need to sit down and read it as like one collective whole again. But glad to see that it made both of our list.
Yeah, not for nothing. I mean, it sounds like a backhanded compliment, or maybe it isn't even. But I think it's the way that Boss writes children is really impressive to me. Not that he wrote 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank or anything, but obviously they're not kids, but the younger people in this book. I find often that comic book writers either really infantilize their characters or make them geniuses at the age of like 6, which I kind of like that Boss's characters in this book do believably dumb stuff that kids would do, but are also capable of real impressive feats and like just will go balls to the wall. And like Corey said, if you haven't read this book, definitely go pick it up. It sounds like the hardcover is hard to find, but I imagine the digital is, I think it's on Comixology or wherever you find your digital comic book. So
exactly,
definitely worth reading.
Chase, should we take a quick break real quick?
Yeah, we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about each of our number ones.
My name is Peter B. Parker. I was bitten by a radioactive spider, and for the last 22 years, I thought I was the one and only Spider-Man. What a day. I'm pretty sure you know the rest. You see, I saved the city, fell in love, I got married, saved the city some more, maybe too much. My marriage got testy, made some dicey money choices, don't invest in a spider-themed restaurant. Then like 15 years passed, blah, 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 super burn. I broke my back, a drone flew into my face. I buried Aunt May, my wife and I split up. But I handled it like a champion. Because you know what? No matter how many times I get hit, I always get back up. And I got a lot of time to reflect and work on myself. Did you know that seahorses, that they mate for life? Could you imagine a seahorse seeing another seahorse and then making it work? She wanted kids and it scared me. I'm pretty sure I broke her heart. Flash forward, I'm in my apartment doing push-ups, doing ab crunches, getting strong. When this weird thing happened, and I gotta say, weird things happen to me a lot, but this was real weird.
And it's time for our number ones. Luckily, we do have 2 different number ones. I think it would be, I guess, fair, but a little bit boring if we came back and just talking about the same comic book. But, Corey, what is your number 1?
My number 1 is, I think a lot of people said, Che mentioned this on a lot of people's list. But I've been talking about this book since 2019, single issues. And then after a point, I'm like, I'm just going to fucking wait and just wait for this to be collected. But it is N.K. Jemison's and Jamal Campbell's Far Sector. It's a DC book based on this new Green Lantern character set in this very standalone book. It tells the story of this new Green Lantern who's sent to the ends of the universe to basically act as the sheriff for this planet that has 3 different types of species. And all of the entire thing about it is everybody has their emotions turned off. And what happens in this society when the first murder in 100 years happens. And basically she has to solve this mystery while also dealing with this corrupt government and also dealing with a bunch of people who don't have emotions. It's a very interesting, by itself, the sci-fi idea of this planet is so well done. I think she does such a good job of building up this world, establishing the rules and making it understandable to anybody. Her main character is so good as like a rookie Green Lantern. She limits like her powers in the right way. It's told with a lot of love, and I think even like the points that it touches on outside of the story, I think by itself the sci-fi story of it is so good. And I think what she adds on to it is something I feel like only a person of color could probably like think about to add into it. And it's so good. And I think like I don't want to like ruin things. I want people to kind of experience this book as it comes along, so you can see the themes that she's going for. But yeah, no, I mean, that's one of like standalone as a sci-fi thing. I was just enthralled in this world, and like as it was like when it was over, I was so sad that I had to leave this world. And also Jamal Campbell's art and colors just fucking ridiculous. I think it's just like the 2 of those, just the combination of it is the reason I propelled this to my number 1. For a first-time comic book writer, I couldn't even fucking tell. She's good. She's just fucking good.
Yeah. Jemison obviously a celebrated novelist, and I think many people will have heard of this book at this point. But
I can. It's funny. I saw a comment about it on some. I was trying to figure out trying to find the comic on like Comixology or the best way to buy it. And someone's like, I don't understand these woke comics, and I'm like, I read it. I'm like, I hate you. But also, I can understand. No, I can't understand, but I see why the idiots in the world don't like a bisexual black woman as their main character. So
Listen, I mean, if you're gonna get offended by like people that exist being in books, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, honestly, ridiculous. It's crazy, but no, it's no. I think if you just want like a good sci-fi story, I recommend it, and you're gonna get a bunch of other things as a treat.
I mean,
the artsy. Oof.
Like you said, this is obviously your Jemison's first foray into comic book writing, and then we know that can go well or not so well. I mean, obviously the most famous example in recent memory is oh my god, Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther, which we both agreed had its goods and its bads. I think he's gotten better as a comic writer as the years have gone on. But yeah, I agree with you. This is amazing first foray, and I always worry, and I talked about John Ridley's the other history of this universe earlier, like another person who this was their first foray into comic book writing, and will you use the medium of a comic book to your advantage, or will you just write the way you normally do and then send it off to somebody and have them draw pictures around it? This book from Jemison feels like a comic book. Feels like a genuine DC superhero comic book that, and I think that is saying something, because I think I would imagine, as not as somebody who's ever written a novel, but I think the practice of writing a novel and writing a comic book have to be quite different in the way you construct a story. So
yeah, but I think like her sense of world building is very clear, and like she does it in such an organic way that it's just fantastic. Yeah, no, I would I think this should be the next Green Lantern miniseries or movie or something like that. Just do this shit. Make them all.
That won't happen. But I would
agree
with you.
Mad. Make them all mad. Fuck them all. Just.
Although I guess Doom, but not even. I guess Doom Patrol's not that. It has its moments, but it's definitely not black bisexual woman.
Space Cop.
Yeah. Although this reminded me a lot of another
Taking down
series
the system.
that we really loved, Excellence. And when I was reading it, obviously that parallel in my mind.
This dunks on Excellence. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. I'm sorry. I'm just. Sorry. I'm just.
I really like Excellence. I do like Far Sector,
a lot.
but
There's a reason this is like my number one. Like
Yeah.
this book, like definitively above every book I've read this year. It has been my favorite.
I say something.
Yeah, no, I think I'm excited to read this again. Like probably 5 more times.
Just 5, not 7.
Just 5 now. Paper Girls is on this. I've only done Paper Girls 4 times through, so this is. I'm trying to keep my numbers and be realistic now. Take your time with this book whenever you pick it up, because just look at the backgrounds. Because Jamal Campbell, the colors and the pencils on it is just yeah, man, good. It's good. It's a good book. It's a good book. Jay, what's your number 1 of the year?
I mean, speaking of Head and Shoulders, had to be number 1. Like I said, I had a lot of trouble making this list. There's been a lot of great comic books. I read a lot of great comic books. I didn't get a chance to read a lot of great comic books either. But once I finished this book, there was no other book that could be number 1. And that is Barry Windsor Smith's Monsters, the Fantagraphic. Honestly, tome is the best way to describe it.
Ridiculous.
I mean, this thing is massive. Both like I said before, both physically and emotionally very heavy. This book is epic in every sense of the word. It spans so many stories and so many ideas. When people normally say something like this book was 50, 40, 30 years in the making, I generally don't believe them. Like some guy wrote like an outline on his typewriter 50 years ago and then eventually got to it, and it actually took him only like 5 years to write. I believe that Windsor Smith took the 35 years to write this book that he claims. It is artistically, just like literally the art is dense and beautiful and also horrifying at times. You were talking about body horror in relation to Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk. This is if you are squeamish about body horror, I would not read this book. I mean, I would struggle through it, but I understand if you don't want to. Windsor Smith basically explores a myriad of different themes, all placed on the background of a family drama and a political drama, where we follow the descent into, like, honestly, I can't really describe it any more than like just this descent into madness by these characters trying to butt their head against a system that is corrupt and evil, in a way that feels like it is cartoonish. Anytime you got Nazi German technology to build superhumans, it feels very Red Skull-esque, and then at times it's like depressingly realistic. And one of the scenes that sticks out to me early in the book is this scene where our main character is talking to I don't remember the rankings in the military. He's a sergeant, somebody above a sergeant, a general or a major or something, and he's so nice to him, to his face. And our main character is a black sergeant, Sergeant McFarland, one of our main characters, I should say. And he's so nice to him, to his face. He does the thing where he's like, "Hey, you've had a tough time. Go take a vacation." And maybe you don't know as a reader, but I know as a person who's been black in America for my whole life, it's not everything to the story, and it only takes the closing of the door. He walks out of the room, and then this character gets on the phone and calls somebody else, and he's calling him a monkey this and a
yeah, of course,
say he's got small brain, and it is the story of I mean, again, speaking of woke comics, I'm sure this has infuriated a lot of people in that it is a not very thinly veiled look at the history. I would just say I was gonna say the bad history of America, but just the history of America. It's impossible to separate the good things that America has done with the evil. and I think a lot of that is tied into this epic story. Is it hard to recommend a 40-page, 700-pound book to people to read? Maybe. It's an investment. It's only 360 pages technically, but as you guys can see, there are 360 tall fucking pages, and like I said, very, very dense art at times, and just very dense writing in a way that I think not like Neil Gaiman, who, I mean, I love Neil Gaiman's comic books, but he will just jam a bunch of shit onto a page. But I found myself over and over again, I'm going to try my best to hold up this book to the camera. I find myself just reading back over and over again pages and flipping back and like checking what characters were saying and the themes that Windsor Smith manages to carry throughout scenes is just amazing. And this book is immaculately created. And like I said, they say it took him 35 years, and I buy it. This is a masterpiece. It is. I have only read it once. I will be honest, but I really want to go back and really dive back in and spend some time, because I needed to blaze through it to finish it for the podcast. But I want to go back and spend a lot of time with this book. I think it is an achievement, and I mean, it's not fun. It's not a happy read. I won't claim that, but I think if you do pick this book up, you will really love it. Yeah, I think you'll fall in love. So definitely go check it out.
I'm excited to pick up Monsters.
Yeah.
Very excited to pick up Monsters.
I think
I didn't hear about this book until 3 days ago.
I think there's a digital version of it. Let me just double check before I tell people to go
there is.
Buy a giant tome.
I believe there is. I saw some scans of it, so I figured that there has to be at this point.
Yes.
I think Drawn and Quarterly are the only ones who don't really regularly do that.
Usually, I mean, they do eventually release the digital versions. I think it depends which, like, for both of them, if they're going to do them both at the same time. Yeah, so if you're looking for a digital version, it's just easier to carry. Although I have to imagine this would be pretty difficult to read on even like a tablet. Just like the pages would get pretty small. But either way. Yeah, definitely go check this out. Should we run down our list really quick and then let the people go?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, I'll run down my list. We got number 10, Factory Summers by Guy Delis. Jesus Christ.
We don't have to do it. Just say the names. Just say the names.
Factory Summers by Guy. Reckless by Ed Brubaker and
I don't want to do my list. This is fucked
fine,
up.
fine.
Stop it.
Number 8, Strange Adventures. Number 7, That Texas Blood. Number 6, The Waiting. Number 5, The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. Number 4, The Department of Truth. Number 3, Tunnels. Number 2, Dead Dog's Bite. And number 1, of course, Monsters.
And you can find these lists sometimes next week on our website at nexttimeon.net. Yes. And for my top 10, we got 10, Immortal Hulk. 9, The Good Asian. 8, Eternals. 7, Daredevil. 6, Rorschach. 5, Dead Dog's Bite. 4, Strange Adventures. 3, Nightwing. 2, The Nice House on the Lake. And my number 1 is Far Sector. It might be Green Lantern Far Sector, but I think you could just find it by saying Far Sector.
Just Far Sector, yeah.
I think it might just be Far Sector. You don't need to know anything about Green Lantern for that book. It's just part of it.
I mean, you should know what a Green Lantern is.
Yeah, the general concept behind it. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, come on, listen to this podcast at this point.
Well, I'm sure there's some people in there who just who have heard us talk about comic books and have retained none of the information, just gone in one ear and out the other. I'm sure
that's very fair.
They're just here. They're here for our takes on Loki, the TV show.
Exactly. Well, Chase, should we let our audience go?
Yeah, just of course, go follow us at Next Time On Pod. Like Corey said, all this stuff is on nexttimeon.net. And last but not least, if you have not already, go subscribe to the YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And that's it for me. I've been Che.
I've been Corey.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Sweet Christmas.